Okay, in the previous clip, I was able to show you in the first few lines, first 10 lines, how Steinbeck used language to convey the theme of power and inequality, as well as to develop characters and relationships within the text. Now, as I go through this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus very closely on the passage, but it would be appropriate for me to make some uh, movements to what I know of the text overall. So what you're going to find me doing at times is to make a comment on what I can see happening at that critical moment, but then also to look across to what I know about the text as a whole. So we go up to line 10. Now, in the first few lines, we've really seen Curly's vicious attack. He's bullying, using violence physically against Lenny and asserting his power unfairly. But here we do see Slim jump up and say, "The dirty little rat, I'll get him myself." Now that should be very encouraging for Lenny and George, because Slim is a man with a lot of power on the ranch. Slim is powerful, high status. He is respected by everyone, from the boss to Crooks, the lowly stable hand. Now, Curly is the boss's son, so he does have power, but you can see the contempt that Slim has for him, because he uses that very derogatory term, "you dirty rat." So that shows contempt. And Curly is lambasted by all of the men on the ranch because of his aggressive nature. His treatment of the other men is cruel, and he is also depicted as an angry, short man who is a little bit, with his glove full of Vaseline, a little bit of a seedy character as well. Now here, George, maybe encouraged by Slim, encourages Lenny to get him. Now George is Lenny's protector. So George has power over Lenny in their relationship because he protects him, but he is also someone who is physically weaker than Lenny. So Lenny is helped here by George, because George thinks for Lenny. It takes him a long time, though. We can see again Lenny's body language is defensive. Curly slashed at his eyes, so Curly is prepared to fight dirty. That means we see him unsympathetically throughout. Now here, this is a pivotal turning point at line 17. Curly was flopping like a fish on a line, and his closed fist was lost in Lenny's big hand. Well, we see the physical difference in size through the use of this figurative device. The figurative device is a simile. He is flopping like a fish. And if we take that figurative device, then it also means that Lenny becomes the angler, and so he now has power, and he has caught Curly. Now, although George encouraged him to fight back, his immediate reaction when he sees this is one of panic, because he knows the danger involved. He has seen Lenny's massive strength, and so there's a desperation with that exclamatory phrase by George. "Let go of him, Lenny, let go." Exclamatory phrase plus repetition sets us up for this idea that Lenny is out of control. Lenny watched in terror the flopping little man whom he held. Now, it's almost like described, it's in the third person here. Lenny it's like an out-of-body experience. He has so little control over what's happening, he's seeing it in the third person. Lenny is bleeding. George slaps him now. So in a desperate attempt to control Lenny's violence, there's physical cues being given to the verbal cues to stop attacking him. Curly, who was once so balanced and poised, is now, there's a contrasted description here. He is white and shrunken, almost appears to be on the point of death. He had become weak. He stood crying, his fist lost in Lenny's paw. Well, he stood crying. That is not tough or masculine. That will lose him his reputation on the farm. This is a very masculine world of tough men, and so he has been emasculated at this moment, and we are reminded of Lenny's bear-like strength with that description of his paw. George implores Slim to help him because Slim is powerful there, and Lenny is someone who hates this violence, so he is by nature a peaceful character. What's I doing? Yeah, doing that in green. So he's a peaceful character. He crouched cowering against the wall. We can comment there on the body language. Shows his mental powers are weak. He hates this situation and backs away from it. Curly also sees himself in the abstracted third person. He looks in wonder at his crushed hand. So Curly is appalled by the injury that Lenny has bestowed upon him. And in the final part of this, in the final 10 lines or so, we really get to see Slim's assertive nature, because Slim here is the decision maker. And people listen to what he says. He quickly analyzes the situation, and people follow his cues. So, in addition to that, although he is respected by all on the ranch, he is a very sympathetic character. He recognizes that Curly provoked Lenny, and so he is consoling Lenny at this stage. We have the repetition or reiteration of offensive language. Earlier it was dirty rat. That has now been matched with this punk, so it shows you the contempt that Slim has for Curly. And at this stage, George is desperate. George has the brains to see the consequences of his action. George is really worried about the stake, which is their pay, and he's probably also worried about the threat of jail for the attack. And the colloquial language to get canned means to get the sack. But Slim smiled wryly. Now that adverb wryly is very important because it shows Slim's quiet authority. He already knows his course of action, and he already knows that Curly will agree to keep his silence, because Curly doesn't want his reputation to be lowered on the farm. He doesn't want to be embarrassed by his wife, to be told that he cried in front of other men, and so if he keeps silent, then Lenny will keep his job, and then they can go on together. So within that, we've discussed the characters, their relationships, and the themes of power and inequality. What needs to happen now is to put this into a logical order, to see these ideas of what's most important, and then that will help us write our thesis statement to get to what are the driving movements of the author throughout this section.